Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. Mom and I are both grateful that you can join us for another week. And today we're excited we have Rob Thomas on with us. He wrote Wordless Connection. He was at his wit's ends as it seems like everything he said to his beloved wife to draw her closer just ended in disaster and disappointment. He saw this incredible woman pulling away, and nearly every word that came out of his mouth made it worse. So Rob began to explore what might happen if he stopped talking and began a gentle campaign of nonverbal communication, reaching her in ways that conveyed his love with the misunderstandings or missteps that words risked. You'll discover the incredible results in his new book and in our interview today, Wordless Connections, Deepen Intimacy Without Saying a Word even if you're married. Rob doesn't just apply this to his own relationship. He tested it with many couples across the globe and they raved about the renewal of their life. So, welcome, Rob. We're super excited to have you on the podcast with us today.
And thank you. Glad to be here. Uh, Look forward to the time together.
Yeah. So, can you tell us well, obviously, what inspired you was your relationship with your wife, but can you talk about a little bit about why you wrote the book based on that?
Sure. Part of it is really, I think this is very human. We get into a situation, and first of all, whatever we're good at, we then do twice as much of that. So we tend to lean further into it and further into it. And I'm kind of a verbal guy, and I found no matter what I did, I read these books, I listened to tapes, and I kept thinking, this is it. And really, I just wasn't getting any progress. Anyway, a part of my working with different organizations and consulting with them, uh, generally they invite me to help them for a certain specific purpose, and I have a plan that I share with them, and they ask me to do that. But once in a while, as I'm working with an organization, as much as it worked before, whatever the plan is, and I'm working with my team, we're just not getting traction in the organization. And so one of the things that we've done is that I'll get the team together and we'll list all the things that we're currently doing. And we then make a list of what's the opposite of that. And we then look at what can we do differently. And we often start with the opposite. And we have found that that often gets us traction and we can move forward. So I faced this kind of difficult situation. And I thought, what could I do differently? And so I really started thinking about what's the opposite of what I'm doing. And really, I was very aware of my talking and the fact that that was not only not helping, but I think if anybody's been in a situation where they're trying to use their strength too much, they're really digging themselves a hole. And believe me, I felt like I was in the hole. So I thought, what can I do? And I thought, what can I do is the opposite. And I'd had some experience in my life, and I kind of talk a little bit about this in the book, where I'd had interactions with nonverbal communication. And so that was kind of the impetus where I thought, let's do the opposite, stop talking, and how might I line this up to be able to try something new that would be effective. So that's kind of how it got started.
That's very interesting. And I love that you start talking about the non-verbal. And I've started your book, but I'm only just a little bit, tiny bit into it. But I love how that you I love how you talk about, that there's all these ways that we can actually speak to each other without
Sure.
actually speaking to each other.
Right. It's surprising.
Yeah. So can you
Uh,
let the listeners know a little bit about that, how that works?
sure, sure. Um, but a couple of things. One, I do have a number of options that I talk about in the book, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I also want to highlight one of the things that, as I was going through this process, I kind of identified what I call five experiments that I first kind of worked on and kind of tried in my own relationship. And as I got those kind of refined and had the experience, that's when I did some national research and I got other couples to try these five experiments. So part of the book, and we'll probably talk about this while we're together, but part of the book is really helping you understand how to do these five experiments and find your own journey that works for you. And so I just tee that up because I think that's real important and helpful, and that's part of the value of the book. Now, I do talk about a lot of things, and I talk about eye contact, I talk about hand holding, I talk about uh, even grooming or the clothes you wear, uh, and I kind of go into those different things. One of the things I think is really helpful that I think matters is dealing with eye contact. And one of the things that I highlight in the book is I came across an article in the New York Times a few years ago where they were talking about a group where they were doing some research and they had like 32 questions that were really about people getting acquainted with each other. And then at the end of the 32 questions, the two people would sit and stare at each other for a period of time. And so, as the article unfolded, they would get people who were generally compatible dating wise. So, whatever their situation was, they got people who, you know, wouldn't be that much of a stretch for them to be in a relationship, even though they were strangers. And then they went through the 32 questions. And when they got to the eye contact, the thing that I thought was real interesting or even bizarre is that they would then have them sit and stare at each other for 4 minutes. And after I read the article and the punchline of the article, I then looked up the research and read it further. Anyway, the thing that was so surprising is not only did, after this experience of spending 4 minutes staring at each other, did they look forward to having more of a relationship. A lot of these people actually had a long-term relationship. That many of them even got married, which really I think is very curious, and it highlights not only the power of eye contact, but there's a lot of connectivity that we get through our body without words. And I think this idea that just through eye contact, the people can have this kind of connection that becomes meaningful and meaningful enough that it seems more meaningful than other relationships they've had. And so, uh, as we kind of go through some of these things in the book, that's kind of true of all these things is that the body has a way of communicating with somebody else's body that is meaningful, and it just takes a few moments, and this is really the foundation of that connection.
And I could definitely see that with the eye contact because I find, especially in today's day and age, a lot of people are on their phones. And actually, my husband and I often laugh because we'll go out for dinner and then there's like all these couples around us and everybody's just on their phones and they're not even looking
Right,
at each other and engaging in even conversation or even looking at each other. And
right,
that's one thing for me that I have, and I think that's something mom instilled in me is when you're talking to somebody to always look in their face and look in their eyes and like have that eye contact because then yeah, you can read each other's body signals, even to the effect if you're with somebody not in a relationship and you're like, okay, I think they're done with this conversation. I should,
right,
leave their
right,
office
right.
or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. The eyes show everything. They show your soul if you let them. I
Sure.
really think
Sure.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, uh, I've done public speaking workshops, and one of the things we talk about is that you make eye contact with somebody in the audience, and when you make contact and they see that they're being seen, uh, they will then they really become engaged. And as I was coaching this, we'd talk this about eye brain control. So with contact with the eyes with someone, you also are really communicating to their inner self. And so I think eyes are really powerful. And the body really has kind of a mechanism where it has its own agenda, where it wants us to be safe. It wants us to be in a good place. It and our body knows it's in our best interest that we're in a relationship. And so it does a lot of things to try and help make sure that whatever relationship we're in, that that is working out. And we've really got a lot of tools within each of us to help bring that about.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there is so many ways, and I think I love what you were saying too about body language because I think our bodies, we can tell, right? Somebody's uncomfortable with us, somebody's leaning in because they're interested in what we're saying. So I love that you researched a lot of that eye contact and did all that to find out these different ways that people can actually communicate. And The other was when the pandemic was on and everybody was wearing masks. We
Sure.
found,
I
right?
did this too. Sure.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you'd be like, hi, and then you're like, well, I can't, see my mouth when I smile, so you'd be like smiling with your eyes, right?
Sure, sure. That's really powerful. And some people listening to this may think, "Oh, I've got to practice this, or I've got to somehow become more uh, aware of the specifics of how to do this." And really, I want to assure everyone that this message is for every woman, for every man, for every person. That really we already know how to do this. As you look at the very beginning of the book, in the introduction, I talk about how humans, our fellow humans, we love being in groups. And the earliest part of us, say 300,000 years ago, we started organizing in groups for safety, to go hunting together, to start forming family bonds, to have children. And this was all part of this group. Now, the thing that is interesting is that as much as we started living in groups together over 300,000 years ago, we didn't actually develop the ability to speak till about 50,000 years ago. So we went through this eons of time without words. And so to get through and to make things clear and to not only date someone, as it were, and I'm sure it's different, but probably very similar to what we go through today, as well as to have children and teach them and guide them and so forth. We had to do this all wordlessly. And so over time, we would develop, and we did develop, this ability to communicate wordlessly, and our body developed this library of things to do and act as we are trying to make a connection with someone. And we did this long enough and over a period of time that it's really in our DNA. So this is really everyone who is born here has this within them. There's not a culture on the planet, regardless of the language they speak, that doesn't know what a smile is, or what a hug is, or in this case, we talked about eye contact, or a kiss. Everyone knows this. This is just part of who we are as we come into the world. And we kind of got into this situation. We were talking about people being at the restaurant looking at their phones. We really have become almost over communicators when it comes to words or speaking, or in this case, using our phones. And this element of using our bodies to communicate has kind of taken a back seat. And one of the things that I discovered in my own experience, as well as working with these research participants, is that as we're trying to communicate with our body, there's a big difference between, say, hugging someone the whole time we're talking, and we're giving a play-by-play of whatever we're thinking or why we're doing it, or we're apologizing, or we're talking about something else. And there's a big difference between that and saying nothing. And so really the exercise is one of the instructions, and believe me, there's only a couple. One of the instructions is don't say anything before, during, or after the experiment. Just go in and do it. And then I had the participants keep journals, and it was really amazing as they had these experiences. They thought it would be a little bit of a spark, or it might be positive. They really thought they were going to screw it up. They didn't screw it up. And it really not only turned out to be very, very positive for their partner, but something that really came out in all the journals that I read is that they themselves were elevated. So this is really kind of a partnership that our body is looking to have with someone else. And so again, this wordless connection can happen in a lot of different ways. And that's part of the adventure. So anyway, it's very exciting.
So do you set the scene before you get them to do that? So that, like, because my mind travels so much. If trying to sit still for 4 minutes, my mind's everywhere. So
No.
do you
Actually, in the book, we don't do the 4 minute thing. I was just giving an example.
Okay.
I just gave an example of the power of
Okay.
eye contact. The experiments themselves really take like 5 seconds. I mean, that's it. You don't have to prepare. You don't have to warn your partner. You don't have to ask permission. You just go in and do it. And really, like one of the experiments is a hug, a 5-second hug. And see, a lot of times when people hug each other in families or whatever, they might do it for 1 or 2 seconds and then they part. And really, what we're looking to do is, and again, for some reason, again, the body has some sort of mechanism that when we hug someone for more than 5 seconds, all of a sudden the body recognizes this is meaningful, this is significant. Heads up, pay attention. And it's at 5 seconds and beyond that our body starts acting a little differently. And one of the great things that we often forget about our bodies, it's got a whole pharmacology source where it can release endorphins and oxytocin and other chemicals that make us feel good. And that is part of the connection. And that's part of why we feel elevated. But one of the things that, again, matches that is that as we're hugging someone else, their body too wants to connect. And all of a sudden, their body is releasing endorphins within them and oxytocin. And so all of a sudden, they too are feeling elevated. And this is where the connection takes place. And as you go through the book, there's really a lot of different ways where the body looks to connect that are really surprising. And so, again, it doesn't take any permission. You don't need to really practice. Part of this is really just helping you understand, oh, yeah, I can do that. And it's really making yourself aware that I already have this, I already can make this happen. And it's just understanding that and then doing it and seeing how others experienced it. I found it has been very powerful. And that's part of the reason I wrote the book.
We're a bit of a huggy family anyways, us. And
well, there you go.
But I find that with me anyways, when I hug someone, if they start pulling away, I find I hug a little bit harder just for that couple of seconds to say, I accept you as this hug. That's what kind of sort of what I'm conveying to them, like, it's okay. I like hugging.
I think that that's very powerful. And I come from a family that was good huggers, but my sister is a side hugger. And where she just puts her arm around someone. And so when I'm hugging her, I say, no, I got to do both arms, buddy. So anyway, so yeah, it is your own journey. It's your own experience and your own experiment. One of the things that at one point early on, I thought about telling my wife that I had done this. And I had my first experience, and we did this a few more times. And then something occurred that really surprised me. And so I decided not to talk to her about it. And what happened is that I had done this, and then she initiated something that I talk about in the book where she decided to start leaving me small notes on my pillow, which she had never done before. And we'd been in this long-term relationship, and she'd write a little, sticky note. She got a little tin can that had a lid on it, and she wrote like love and affection on the top of it, and put that on my pillow. And so I remember the first night I saw it, I opened it up, and she wrote me a little note, and it was just a few words. And anyway, it really touched me. And this actually, because I hadn't experienced it before, but this little note was something that touched me. And so I looked at her, and she smiled, and we wound up talking a little bit about the note she left. Anyway, she wound up leaving me a number of notes, 1, 2, or more a week, over a couple of years. And I really, really enjoyed that. In fact, I saved them. In fact, I quoted several of them in the book. And the fact that she came up with this goes back to something else I noticed, not only between my wife and I, but in this research, is that when someone did this again, in fact, I told him do 3 experiments. I want you to try out 3 of the experiments, and I want you to do 3 times, each 3 over the next week. And so they tried this out, and as they got started, something interesting happened either at the end of the first day or maybe the second day, is that they had done something and that was really out of context for them, where they gave their partner a kiss or a hug for 5 seconds. And their partner often even would say, what do you want? Or, what's up with this? Why are you doing this? And because it was out of the routine. And see, that's part of what you're doing is it's out of the routine and the body is responding and recognizing this is important, but is it false? Is it real? I mean, are they really engaging me this way? Because I am feeling it. And so the partner would say, sure, no, I'm just wanting to share my feelings for you. Because I told him, don't tell him you're doing this because it kind of changes the dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that happened, again, with almost all of them, is that within a day or so, without discussion or permission, their partner started to mirror this. They would come into the room and give their partner a 5-second hug. And again, they'd never done it either. Okay, so it's not like they'd been pining for this. No, neither of them had done this behavior, and so this was new for the person who first initiated it, and it was new for the person receiving it. And all of a sudden, it seemed like it was okay. So the person who first received it was now initiating it, or finding other ways to share something in a nonverbal way. And so this became very surprising to the people involved in this experimenting. And again, this all just kind of unfolds because we want to connect. We need to connect, and we kind of have lost our way a little bit about how we do connect. And so when our body gets a heads up that, party's on, let's try this, we engage. So it's been a very interesting process.
I think it's really interesting because I love that it mirrors that. And I know when I've done some of like these things, leave notes or hug somebody without saying anything, it's interesting to watch how they react to it. And then while you're doing it or you're gearing up to do it, if I'm leaving somebody a nice note, it's like I'm feeling all that joy within me, knowing that probably when they get that, they're going to be like, "Aw, they thought of me," or so I love that you talk about all these little things that are so accessible to all of us. Like you say, we all have these already in our toolkit. It's just bringing them out forward to make these connections.
Right. And in fact, one of the things that you made a point of that I think is very also powerful is that now, with all the research people that I did this with, again, I've done a lot of research in my business and test groups and control groups and so forth. And I always expect that there are going to be some naysayers. I've often joked that, man, you could give people money and they would complain, or, you didn't give me enough, or I only want big bills or something. I mean, so I anticipated when I did this research that would have some people either not do it or they want to coach me or something. And everyone did it. Everyone did it, and everybody had a good experience. But as I was thinking about this, one thing that was very common is that everyone who initiated it felt good. They felt elevated. And that was kind of the comment you just made. So even if for some reason you may do this, and I even talk in the book where you can have experiences with people in a nonverbal way who, and it's not hugging or kissing, but there are some nonverbal experiences I talk about in the book that you can have. I had one with one of my sons or a coworker. And so there's a lot of different ways that nonverbal interactions can take place. And even if for some reason the person doesn't respond, or maybe there's a mismatch, I don't know, you yourself are elevated because of this. And so this becomes just a nice pattern to have in your life because it elevates you. And so if for no other reason, doing these things helps you have a better moment. And you do 2 or 3 of these things in a day. Again, we're just talking about a few seconds. Your whole day is elevated. And I find that when you do one of these things, even after you're apart and maybe you've gone your own way, you have a bit of an afterglow where you think, man, that was nice. Or you just feel good, or the day's a little brighter. And this all happens as we do this wordlessly, and the body is excited. the body wants and it wants to encourage not only that we do it, but we do it again. And that's why we get this afterglow. This is why this thing continues. And again, that's part of the power of wordless connection.
It definitely is. I find too that with some people, because they're not real big huggers, and but you make them hug you.
Well, that can be true too.
That, but you find the next time you see them, they walk to you for the hug.
Sure. Yeah.
They
No,
do.
I agree. It's fun and interesting how that unfolds.
Yeah.
And I put a couple of experiments that are non-touching wordless connections in the book because I also think there are people who are not big touchers,
No,
And so, well, there is still a way that we can connect without necessarily touching, but it still is very meaningful. One of them is about what I call notes of care. And this is where, again, I've kind of got this from my experience with my wife, where she wrote this note and left it for me. And the notes just really were powerful. And so I put this as one of the experiments, and I asked the research participants to choose three, and some of them chose notes of care. And some of the things they did is that they would put them, say, in a work bag, or one woman talked about her partner was a football coach, and he had to go away for a 2-hour game, and he got there, and she'd put a nice surprise, a snack in there for him that he really liked, as well as a note. I was talking to an associate about this as I was writing the book, and I was writing this piece about notes of care, and I explained it to him, and he said, it's interesting. My wife just left me a note on my computer screen, and he said, I ought to write her a note. This is like, it just occurred to him. Eureka, sunlight or fire, And so what he did is that he wrote, she was out of town for a day, and when she was gone, he put about 15 notes around the house that were all hidden. One in a few in her office, a few in the kitchen, in different places, in drawers that she could find them. And she was delighted with those notes. But the thing that was so interesting, because he came back and told me this, he said, the thing that was interesting is that she took none of them down. She wanted to have them in place so that every time she opened the cupboard or she was in her office, she saw that note, and it made her feel good, and it reminded her of her care for her partner. And so I think that these things, they don't have to be a touchy-feely thing. And again, when the body sees these things, again, let's crack open the endorphins. Let's feel better. Let's be elevated. And again, when these people, they talked about doing these things for their partner, they felt a little giddy about what they wrote. And some of them even wrote, goofy things. In fact, one of my editors, as I was preparing the book, commented as I was talking about the notes of care, said, and I have a picture of a note of care. I mean, that's a drawing. And this editor said, you want to get something better, something a little more romantic, or, something more clever. And I said, I actually am only including this stuff from the research. So these are things in the book that people actually used. And I liked using that because it highlights that it's like writing a note when we were in elementary school. That still gives us a charge. It's almost like a little Valentine candy heart. It can be as simple as that. And we're attracted. Again, we get that endorphin pull that we know that we're seen. Yeah. We're seen. That's what we want to be. We want to be seen so hard in this day and age. And that's, I think, one of the reasons we look at all these social media things is that we're wondering if anyone sees us. Mm-hmm. And we can get that with our partner through these activities.
Yeah, I
it's
think
interesting. Kim and I used to always put notes to each other, and inside cupboards and whatever. We haven't done that so much this last little bit, I guess, because we do it texting, but sure. We used to do it all the time. And it was fun because you get excited about doing the note and putting it someplace where they're going to see it later. And then you wait for them to come back, whether it's a day or whatever the case may be. You wait for the response because inside you're still giggling that it's there. And you're
Sure,
waiting for
sure.
that, So when they
Yeah.
do respond finally, when Kimmy would finally respond and say, "Oh, Mom, thanks," or I would say, "Oh, thanks, Kimmy, that's cute." And yeah, we left it in our cupboards too.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. It's kind of a universal thing. And even if you do it again and again, we still get that charge. I mean,
Yeah.
we like it.
I think
Yeah.
most people just want to be seen and be acknowledged. I know for a while I was putting them in the grocery stores. Like I'd walk down an aisle and just be like, smile, you're beautiful, or whatever, right? Just to have people be able to be seen, be acknowledged, be like, hey, I should smile. I am beautiful, right? To think about those things.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Those things matter. And I think one of the things that is part of the spark is that we're doing things intentionally. So it isn't by chance, it's not just a side hug. We have decided we want to be intentional about caring. And it doesn't have to be a touch. Again, there are a couple of other things you can do. And again, you can explore that. You can see what else would work, but you're intentional. And it's that intention that carries the day, that really takes this maybe simple or simplistic message and drives it home in a beautiful way. And and so it's our intention, and really as we remember to do it intentionally, uh, that's where we get more of a response, both within our partner but also ourselves.
Hmm. And I would think that even if you didn't see that automatic response to it, they may walk away and, just like an hour later be like, oh, that was really nice that they hugged me or they left me that note or, touched my
Right.
hand or because I think there's so many ways that, as you're saying, that we can do it verb or touching and not touching is that it's just really to make people stand up and notice, hey, I'm thinking about you, you're in my mind, I want to connect, right? A hug is
Right.
Right.
because you connect the heart to heart, and I think any of it just makes them be acknowledged. So I love that you wrote about this, and I think that you wrote about it in a relationship way, and I think it just spreads out to every aspect of our lives.
It does. It does. I talk about an experience I had with my son where uh, I went to visit him, and I come in and he's laying on the couch, and I could see he's a little banged up. And I know that he mountain bikes, and I asked about that, and he said, yeah, he had a bad fall, and he's just kind of recovering. And so we chatted a little bit, and I was in the midst of kind of thinking through this whole wordless connection thing, and one of the things that I do talk about is uh, giving someone a massage on the back or a hand or a shoulder, and again, where you do it very intentionally, where you think of a loving intent in your heart, and then you picture that loving intent go through your arm and to your hand and out your fingertips, and you close your eyes and you really focus on being intentional about how you're engaging them with this massage. And again, it's slow, it's somewhat firm, and whether you're doing it on the hand or the back, um, it's the same approach. Anyway, I thought, I thought, I'm doing this. I'm kind of experimenting with experiments, and so I thought I'd try this with my son. So he, I just asked him. I said, "How would you like a foot rub?" I will tell you, those words never come out of my mouth before with my son. And he's lying there on his back. It goes, I guess so. And so, anyway, so I pulled a chair over, and again, I give some tips about how you do this, where again, you get that you kind of picture something in your heart about love. And again, you're trying to send that message of love through through your fingertips, and you've got your eyes closed, but you're intentional. And so I went through this process, and uh, and so we were both quiet through this process. And anyway, at the end, first of all, one of the things I find interesting is that when you close your eyes and you're intentional, time really goes by quickly. And so even if you think it's just a few minutes or something, I probably did this for maybe 20 minutes, which was not my intention. But again, I was really kind of in, it became almost a meditative process as I was massaging his feet. Anyway, at the end, he was really, it's an interesting response. I do think he was grateful, but he was delighted. I mean, his countenance had changed. He was involved with the business, and he had a lot of stress with his business. And so there'd been kind of a lot of, I just experienced him when he was kind of stressed about his work. Anyway, coming out of this, we wound up having a much lighter conversation, and it really kind of affected the whole evening. And he did comment that he really enjoyed it, and he thought that was great. But I really noticed that it impacted the tone of how things unfolded the rest of the evening and the time that we spent together. And I do think it was a part of this, even though it was a bit out of the ordinary. We can do this with other people in our lives. That are in different places. So I don't know. I thought that was a charming story.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. So doing these experiments, I guess I'm curious because you sort of have brought these to light for people. And so do you, as a general rule, live your life doing these experiments all the time with different people? And do you think that other people, would live their life kind of walking out into the world, taking some of these experiments with them to bring joy to other people?
Well, first of all, I think they can, and I think I'm inviting them to do that. And I will go through phases where I do more or less, but I will tell you something that is very interesting. And if nothing else, and again, I kind of have an emphasis on a relationship with your partner, but it really can happen with anybody. Um, but when I first started doing this with my wife, the very first time, I gave her a 5-second hug. And then again, no permission, no discussion about what we were doing or why I was doing this or anything. The 5-second hug stopped. And right then, just seemed like the natural thing to do. I gave her a 5-second kiss. So we did that. And then what I talk about is that it is helpful. This is kind of like tending a garden. And anytime you want to have a good garden, you're a little intentional about it, where you make sure you water it periodically or you weed it so that the garden can grow. Now, if you don't water and weed it, the garden will still grow and it will overgrow maybe with weeds, and it will not necessarily be the garden you want. And this is the same true with your relationship. So I've really kind of worked at trying to uh, have this kind of experience with my wife, say 2 or 3 times a day. And part of it is if one of us is leaving, uh, we stop in and say, I'm leaving. And then we do this 5-second hug. And again, I don't know why. We also do a 5-second kiss. I do not prescribe that. I don't even know why we do that. I often think, and there are times where we might just only do a 5-second hug or separately a 5-second kiss. But generally, we just do both back to back, and they leave. And again, it is I've worked at not saying thing, and between the two of us, I would be the talker in these moments, and so it's silent, and then we depart. And there are times that during the day, if I'm working at home and my wife comes across my mind, I have made a decision in my life where I stand up, I go find her wherever she is, and I give her a hug. And again, I'm not telling her why. I don't explain it. I don't ask permission. I just go and I give her a hug, and then we do a 5-second kiss, and then we may smile at each other, and then we go back to we go back to work, and she goes back to doing whatever she's doing. And so, um, I think so I keep doing that, and I do look for ways to do that. There's a story that I tell about a guy that I was doing some consulting work for a large organization, and they had a quarterly meeting, and I was there long enough that I attended a number of these, and where a couple of their key leaders would come speak to everybody and what's coming up next and so forth. And I was working with a team that knew one of the speakers, one of the key leaders well, and so after each of this group I was with always wanted to go say, hey, buddy, and chat with him. And anyway, I didn't know this guy. And but I knew these guys, and so I was there with him. And anyway, this guy always shook my hand and said hello, hello. Anyway, I had just a really odd experience with it where, and I couldn't figure out why, but after he shook my hand, I felt like a better person. He didn't say anything to me. Didn't No comment. Again, I never saw him, but after the meeting. And so this happened at 2 or 3 meetings that I, again, was with this group that always go up and talk to this guy, and he'd shake my hand, hello. And I felt like a better person, which made no sense to me. I didn't have a book I was supposed to read. There was no podcast. I mean, there was no secret note, nothing. What? And so I thought I was imagining it. So again, I thought, okay, this next time I shake his hand, I'm not going to feel anything. And so anyway, so I go up, shake his hand. Oh, I feel better. I felt like a better person. So anyway, this really got me going. And so I did a bunch of research on this kind of thing. And I told my family about this guy and how I was researching this. And how I wanted to, if they ever had any thoughts. Anyway, time goes by. As I was writing this book, I decided through a chain of events, I was able to get this guy's address, and I wrote him a letter. And I told him about this experience, which I'd never shared with him. And anyway, he wrote me back. And the thing that he told me, he said, first, I'm really surprised he had any effect on anybody. And but I'd asked him why he thought that might have been an impact. And he said, I had an older brother, and this guy was older, much older than me at the time. And this was back, I don't know, 50 plus years ago. When he was in high school or in junior high. And he said his brother had, had some special needs. And it was just during a period of time, there was no support for that in school, and everybody was incredibly cruel. And I think everyone who's gone through junior high knows how incredibly cruel junior high students can be to each other. Anyway, they were incredibly cruel to his brother, and this really broke this guy's heart. And he really thought, I want to try and be present for everybody that I meet. And he said, I think that might be it. So anyway, I'm just sharing that he carries that love with him. And so that's something that he does even unintentionally. And I was the recipient of it. So yes, I think you can do it. I think you can make a decision that can be part of your life. I think you can make these decisions like I've made, where if my wife comes across my mind, I go find her. So yes, I think you can do this. And that is really part of my invitation in the book. And I invite everybody to read the book so that they can be intentional about it. And then they carry that forward. And again, what a lovely opportunity, help those around you have a better moment.
Oh, it
So
is.
do you have the book with you there so we can have a look at it?
You bet. You bet. I happen to have a copy right here. What a shock. So it's Wordless Connection. And I put this tagline at the end, even if you're married, as kind of a wink. I think people who are in long-term relationships often feel there's no hope. We can't do anything. Somehow we've lost the thread and there's no way to get it back. Well, with allowing our bodies or allowing this wordless connection to take place, we can engage, and so that becomes very positive. So anyway, I invite everybody to read the book. Get a book. You can get it at Amazon. I've got a website, wordlessconnection.com, and anyway, I'm still kind of growing everything. I'm still adding things to the website, but I've got an email address on my website. If anybody would like to reach out to me, that would be great.
Beautiful. I find showing the book is good too, because then people can put that in their minds about what they're looking for, So I think that's important. So
Yes,
good
it
for
is.
you.
Actually, when you were
Buy
talking,
the book.
right? It was funny
Yeah,
because my husband does and I do that is when one of us leaves or one of us comes home, we always, you know, greet each other and then we give each other three quick kisses. I don't know why it's three, and everybody around us is like, "Really?" And it's like it's our thing, but it's
sure.
our way of saying this is our
What a
thing,
nice thing.
brings us together, right? So
How
Yes.
gracious. That is very nice.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
just thought I'd share that because it just everything that you're saying is so inspiring. And like I say, I think that this is great for relationships because it will help in relationships where we sometimes go through those rocky periods. And I think your book will really be a help for people to be able to say, hey, maybe we can make this connection come back together again. And then I think
Exactly.
trickle out into other areas of our lives when we're in the office, when we're in the shopping center,
Yes.
just to bring this joy and spread that out through
Yeah.
everywhere we
I,
go.
I think part of the human condition is always to be in crisis. And it's either we're going to get married or we're changing jobs or our kids are sick or we're having kids, we got a job or we lost our job. One thing or another, we're helping a
Yeah.
family member. I mean, we're just always in crisis. And I think that is part of this human way about how we evolve over time. So since that seems to be a little bit of our daily navigation of life on earth, we need some moments. And this is where I think this wordless connection matters, is that we can have these little breaks, these little, what I call vacations from the chaos. Again, it's just 5 seconds, but I will tell you from the research that I was able to see, it really makes a difference and it draws you together and that stays with you. So it makes you stronger as a couple. So even if you're dealing with a crisis, regardless of what it is, these things can make a difference. Another reason to try this, try the experiments, see how it works. I think it'll be a thrilling opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Mom and I will definitely finish the book because it's
Yes, we will.
very good and I love the way that
Go
you
team.
write because it's not preachy. It's very just like you feel like you're talking to a friend when you're listening, like
Oh,
watching.
thank you.
Reading the
Yeah,
book.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's very
Thank
lovely.
you.
So, if you had a final word to leave with all of our listeners, what would it be?
The thing that I would say is that we have abundance. We have abundance through this experience where our bodies want to step forward and we've got a treasure. And the one thing about this process is that this experience that I've talked about that's waiting for anyone to have happen is that our bodies are quiet until we stop talking. And then we have this treasure that we can not only extend to someone else, but as we extend it to someone else, we ourselves are elevated. So there's this secret of abundance. And again, I don't think there's probably a person on the planet that, however they define abundance, they wouldn't like to have some abundance emotionally, particularly with the people they care about. And so that's really the value of this opportunity is you can access abundance on a moment's notice. You don't have to run fast and get to a certain speed. You don't have to say three magic words. No, it just is there. You just have to intentionally do it, and uh, it'll elevate you. And so that's the magic abundance.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Very
Well,
nice.
thank you. That is a great message, and I can't wait to start trying the experiments in the book myself, Mom. You
Sure.
well.
Yeah, same.
I look I look forward to hearing how they go.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on with us. It was a lot of fun, and I think that our followers are going to get a lot from this. And I
Yes.
hope they all go get your book and start trying this
Yes.
experiment as well. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And everybody else, we will see you on the next one.
You bet so.